Well, first of all, let me thank NORAD for their invitation to give this lecture. NORAD has been a partner, an important partner to the work at the World Bank in the Development Economics group, which I lead. It's of course, a very timely period to ask the question, what does the post-COVID landscape, what is it going to bring us? Let me divide my remarks into three very short segments. I'm going to say a little bit about the global outlook in general, and specifically some of the concerns that I have, which cut across not just the developing world, but also concerns about the general economic global outlook, also including, importantly, the advanced economies. Secondly, I am going to focus more on what are some of the key challenges in 2021 for many of the countries that the World Bank works with, especially focused on the low-income countries, the IDA countries. And lastly, what I'd like to do is just synthesize really very quickly on some of the ongoing work in the pipeline at the bank, and on two dimensions, building back better, and of course the more immediate work of vaccines. But going back to vaccines and my first statement on global outlook, the Global Economic Prospects was just released, and it basically shows a 4% growth rate for this year. 4% growth rate, however, is, I think, a mischaracterization of what we know about 2021. I think one of the very unusual features of 2021 is not point estimates about growth, but their dispersion. We are living in a world of very unusual level of uncertainty. In a good environment, vaccine rollout goes really well. The COVID cases begin to stabilize globally. The projections in that kind of benign scenario are well above 4%. However, quite to the contrary, if the vaccine rollout is much slower than expected, we continue to see further waves of the pandemic, we're looking at a growth rate that's less than half. Critical point that I'm making here is there's a lot of uncertainty. And that is one of the focal points of my remarks. And on the growth issue, it's important for the advanced economies, it's even more important for the developing countries. Do not confuse rebound with recovery. We are definitely in 2021, given the magnitude of the economic contraction that we saw in employment, in GDP, in industrial production, let alone air travel, some sectors relating to the entertainment, tourism, and the like, in paralysis. Relative to the 2020 benchmark, of course, we're going to see a big rebound, but do not confuse rebound with recovery. In my own historical work on crises with Ken Rogoff, we always emphasized that a minimorum definition of recovery is that you at least get back to your pre-crisis level of income. So income per capitas are not likely to have a full recovery in 2021, in 2022, and in many of the poorest countries, even beyond that. So 2 points more on the global dimension, besides the uncertainty, besides what is likely to be a slow recovery, is this crisis has been exceptionally regressive by any metric. It is hitting the poorest within country, the most vulnerable within country. It is also very regressive across country, with the poorest countries being particularly hard hit. Second point about the global crisis that cuts across advanced, emerging, and developing countries is, we have been understandably focused on the pandemic, on the immediate impacts for employment and income. But there are quieter problems brewing in the financial dimension that are a source of concern to me when we look forward into 2021. You can look up my article in The Economist, the World in 2021, or a recent Project Syndicate, where I talk about balance sheet concerns, meaning households, firms, and governments. Households that have lost their jobs, the recession is lasting much longer than anticipated because of new waves of COVID. Small businesses that have seen their doors shuttered for good, not just temporarily. Those are balance sheet concerns. Those are debts that can't be repaid. So I think financial fragility is a very important source of concern. I'm not talking about, the drama of a Lehman moment in 2008, 2009, that kind of crisis, but I am talking about more impaired balance sheets, which unfortunately I think will act as a headwind to a brisk recovery. I want to touch briefly on some of the things that I work on a day-to-day basis in terms of recovery from COVID. One of the challenges that the bank is facing is trying to help many low-income countries that are finding themselves in the midst of a debt crisis, in addition to a health crisis, in addition to an economic downturn of historic proportions. So I think one of the challenges also 2021 is getting the creditors to these low-income countries, whether they're official or private, on board to get the process of debt reduction underway so as to be able to restore growth in many of these very frail economies. I would highlight that among the 73 IDA countries, those are the poorest countries, more than half of them are either in debt distress already or approaching it very quickly. Now, let me not end on a dark note. Let me turn to some of the initiatives going on at the bank. There is a lot of excitement and a lot of work on building back better, building back greener. A new paper on precisely the issues of building back greener, in which it contains, of course, the dimensions of green investment, the dimensions of trying to work with countries to use the opportunity that energy prices are low to reduce fuel subsidies, and also trying to find creative ways to resolve or help resolve the financial difficulties of countries, the debt problems, also looking more at what role, and again, this is more tentative, what role green finance could play in improving the debt profile for many low-income countries that are in dire need, not just because of the challenges they're facing on COVID, on the economy, on debt, but the climate challenges that they are also facing. I have to say that, and this brings me back to a darker note, the recent World Bank report on poverty and shared prosperity showed the first spike in global poverty since the late 1990s. Much of the connection, or much behind the spike in poverty, has to do with climate change. So let me conclude by saying that two areas where the bank is doing much work at the moment is in building back better, building back greener, and importantly, in the more immediate horizon, getting vaccines out to the neediest countries under the COVAX program is right now garnering a lot of effort within the bank. Let me stop there. I want to thank Norad for hosting me at this very important moment. And I sincerely hope that our next engagement will be in person.